Well, welcome everybody to our class, Finding Balance in this COVID season. My name is Trent Jenkins. I'm going to be hosting our time, but with me are three incredible individuals that are going to be really providing the bulk of the content. So with us today, we've got Karen Keith.
Hello.
We've got Connor McFadden and Susan Trueblood. So Karen, you are a licensed family and marriage therapist.
Yep.
And you've been doing that for about how long?
4 to 5 years now.
About 4 to 5
Yeah.
years. But the bulk of your work was with the school district.
Yeah, I worked for Oceanside School District for 23 years, working as an assistive technology specialist, which really gave me the opportunity to work with preschoolers all the way to seniors. So I really got a good flavor and just have a passion for working with children. Yeah.
And so Karen's going to be helping us kind of navigate what do we do with our kids during the season. And Connor, licensed marriage and family therapist, and you've been doing that for how long?
For about 10 years now.
10 years, and you've been on staff with us at North Coast for how long?
About 10 years.
About 10 years. And you might see his handsome face also with our community service. He heads that up and just does an amazing job there. And you can give us a plug later about some of those things. And the one and only Dr. Susan Trueblood.
Thank you for that.
Yes, you got to, I mean, you worked for the doctor.
I have student loans that prove that I have
That's
a
right.
"der" in front of my name.
Yeah. Now, you know, I mean, she goes by Susan. She's not one of those type of doctors.
Thank you.
Corrects you. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Dr. Susan. But we're going to try to keep this light if you can't tell. We love hanging out together as staff members, but we've got a lot of great content that we want to be sharing with you. So this is what we got going for you tonight. This is kind of going to be the structure. Is we're going to go through how do we help our kids interact during this season. We're going to be talking about marriages for a portion. And then what do we do with anxiety and depression? And how do we help others through it? And maybe you yourself are suffering through some as well. So first I just want to ask these three, what's the lay of the land? Are we alone in how we feel as individuals, or are other people feeling the same thing? So Karen, what would you say as far as families with kids? I mean, what are kids going through during the season?
Yeah, well, kids, I see a lot of, you got a lot of anger, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, even apathetic, just really struggling on how to handle what to do. I don't want to forget the parents because the parents are in there, and really they are being impacted quite a bit because they see their kids struggling, they don't know what to do, they come in and they feel like failures. So, having to work with them and realize, hey, you're not alone. And with the children and adolescents, we've really got to look at, just the different personalities that they have, and their different personalities show emotions come out differently. So there's so much involved with a family, especially in times like this. Definitely brings out the frustration with all the dynamics.
Yeah, I know even for my own family, I've got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and my wife just wasn't feeling well, not like COVID sick, but I went in to tuck her in. She was worried because she thought maybe mommy had COVID and could die.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There's a real thing. So how do we help them process their feelings?
Yeah, my 2 words you're going to hear me say a lot is communicate and validate. So just acknowledge your little one, saying, hey, I see that you're scared, and just, come clean to yourself, saying, hey, I get scared too. That helps them out so much to know that they're not alone with their feelings, because they think that they're all alone, and they're the only ones that feel that way. So just sharing how we feel, I'll tell you, is a number one big thing to help reduce their anxiety.
Yeah. So for some parents, though, what's the danger of oversharing?
Good question. Just parents, I would just use your common sense and just look at the age of your child, look at the maturity of your child, and just really see what they can understand. You don't want to share something that they don't understand that would increase their anxiety. Mainly, just validate your children's feelings.
And what's something that's going to be able to help them reduce that anxiety throughout the day?
For the children? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think just having structure is really important in a child's life right now. Even though it's summertime and they think that you don't need it, but they really do. They need some sort of structure. They really should be able to be part of that, part of their planning of their day, of their week. That gets them involved. So yeah, just having them involved and actually having some alone time too. That helps.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that you say, alone time. I feel like there's a lot of times where we feel like, no, you, as parents, we say, no, you need to participate. And sometimes the child just needs actually some own personal space.
Absolutely. Well, I think as us parents and as adults, we need alone time, and children do too. They just need time to decompress, to be able to not have to. Sometimes they feel like they have to put on a show in front of mom and dad to think that they're okay. Just give them some downtime. Let them just chill.
So with all the social distancing in place, and for most of our kids, they've been out of school since March in terms of physically going to school. How do we offer them some sort of outlet for interacting socially?
Yeah, I think that's so important. And so I really encourage my families or the teens that I see that if they can get on the phone, if they can get on FaceTime, I know screen time is a big thing, but this social interaction is really needed for these kids. If it's just in being able to talk on the phone and just to touch base with somebody during the daytime, somebody with their own peer, so they can just talk about what they talk about. I don't know what they talk about. Sometimes I don't want to know what they talk about, but you know, it's a safe place for them that they can just feel like, hey, I've got a buddy and I can reach out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, with all of the broad spectrum of their feelings and emotions, how do we ground them? How do we center them in those emotions?
Well, and that's a really good question because, like I said before, every age brings in a different emotion, a different the different way they express it. So just being aware of your child and your emotions and the maturity. And if they're angry, that's okay. Say, it's okay to be angry. It's just how you display that anger, right? So we want to let them know it's okay how they feel. It's okay if they're frustrated. And yet there's certain ways, we'll give them the opportunity to find something that calms them down. That's the biggest impact, I think.
So what are some practical tools for them to be able to help explore those emotions, but in a healthy way?
Again, I think it's just communicating. If I have a parent, I would tell a parent, tell your child, if they're having a bad day, share that they're having a bad day with them. That allows the teen to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm having a bad day too. Again, it's that communication, it's feeling that they're heard. And then if they're frustrated, just say, I get it, you're frustrated. Sometimes there's not much we can do. We can validate and we can be with them. And sometimes that's all we can do.
And then from like a biblical perspective, how do we bring our faith into that scenario?
I think it's so important, first of all, to normalize the feelings, right? And then, I just love, you can make it as a game, but bring the family in, bring the Bible out, and let's look in the Bible. Let's look at the Bible when anxiety happens, when anger happens, when apathy happens, and let's look at what God did. And it's just such a calming feeling to see that we know people back in the day and in Christ has gone through that. And you know what? We always know that he's there.
Yeah.
And just to always remind them that, and just get them really familiar with the Bible too, to see that, this isn't, unfortunately, that we've gone through this before, 2,000 years ago or years ago. And so now we're doing it again.
Yeah. And I think just encouragement to all you parents, you're like, I don't know that I know those biblical stories. There's this great resource called the internet. And you can just search anxiety in the Bible.
Internet?
Like the internet. And it's amazing. You think like all these pastors know all these passages by heart. They don't. All right, that's just an inside secret. They search and they figure it out and they apply it.
One thing I will say on that is kids feed off our emotions.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they watch us. They're very sensing and they know more than you know that they know. So if your house is calm and fun and light, then they really were going to model that. And if it's stressful, I think they pick up on that. And something in them is saying something's not right. And so then we see they start to react to what we're going through. And so I think as parents, we're just very mindful, hey, what is the home like right now? Are they watching me watch the news? Are they hearing us talk about what's happening? Or are we doing it in a way where we're telling them and teaching them, but we're not perpetuating fear where they're scared because we're scared.
Yeah.
And I like that. I'm going to interject on that too, which is right on. I mean, the kids do pick up that stress from the parents, and that's why it's so important. If the parent is stressed, is to be able to tell that child,
Sure.
you know what, I'm just really stressed today, or whatever it might be. Again, with the language and the emotions for the maturity of that
Yeah.
child. But for that parent to tell that child that, how huge is that? I mean, for that parent to know, hey,
Yeah.
it's okay. My mom's stressed. It's all
Yeah.
right.
Let me ask this question in terms of communication and them knowing about some ways of the oversharing or overprotectiveness with all of the news, and the news being in our homes quite a bit, or it's just in their social media feeds as kids nowadays. How much should we be protecting them from all the information, and how much should they actually be knowing in terms of knowing the death count every day versus not knowing that COVID's taking place at all? What would you guys say to that?
I think there's a great magazine we have called The Week for Kids, and it teaches them what's going on. It teaches them what a virus is and how things spread, how you can protect yourself, what's going on. It also teaches the science and what people are trying to discover, vaccines and things like that. And so I love the way that they're presenting the information, but without all the fear behind it. And so our kids are just learning, and we're able to talk about it.
Yeah,
I think that's how I go about it.
I do too. I didn't even know about that magazine. Huh.
Yeah, and we'll provide a resource to find out more about that magazine in the show notes on the YouTube channel. So we'll give you some of that information.
I think what I would like to add is our family structure before COVID was pretty isolating. Kids go off to school and have their own world. Parents go off to their work and they have their own world. And the best time of the day, or the most chaotic time of the day, was the end of the day when everybody was together. Now we are with each other all day long. And I think there's some confusion on, is my kid anxious, is my kid depressed, when your kid is introverted. And being introverted or being quiet or needing more downtime, your kid is not depressed. Your kid is just an introvert. Your kid might have been a quiet student at school, but now that they're quiet at home, I think there's some of my parents who are like, there's something wrong with my kid. She doesn't want to talk. She just likes reading, and that's it. She's in her room reading. And that isn't necessarily a symptom of depression as much as it is your child is introverted.
So I got to do a follow-up on this, though, because there's the side for so many parents are struggling with teenagers that are withdrawn because they've socially withdrawn because they feel like maybe a misfit. What's the difference between introverted and being isolated?
The difference between being introverted, isolated, and depressed is very subtle. And we know that there are some times when you look at depression or introvertedness, isolation as being normal. Depression and anxiety are normal responses to things that happen to us. But when does it become pathological and is never isolated? It is never one symptom. It's a combination of things.
Yeah.
So if you have a teenager who's moody or angry, if you have a younger child who has regressive behavior, maybe wetting the bed or sucking their thumb or being very clingy, it's a combination of things that we look at that you can bring your child to the pediatrician or to a clinician who will know how to ask the right type of assessment questions to see, is this just a normal response in your child, or is this something that's a little more problematic?
And here's what I'd say too. I would err on the side of annoying over erring on the side of absence. And what I mean is the parent who, yeah, here's my mom again, or here's my dad coming in and loving on me, versus the parent says, I think my kid's okay. Err on the side of going, no, actually, I'm there, I'm present. I have moments where it's just a moment with this kid and we're talking, we're interacting, and maybe they'll say a lot or very little, but we know that we're erring on the side of annoying, that we're present, so much so they're like, all right, space please. Then the parent that sits back and goes, no, I think my kid is okay. We don't want to look back on this and go, man, I wish I would have seen something or known. We want to err on one side of this.
Yeah, and just to kind of round out this segment, and we're going to move to marriages, is just double down on encouragement.
Yes.
Who doesn't like encouragement? And if you think your son or daughter feels isolated, just continue to encourage them, love on them, versus feeling like you're annoyed by them.
Yeah.
So definitely encourage them. So with all of these issues with kids, and kids being at home nonstop from March on, not even be able to go to friends' houses necessarily, it has definitely created some chaos in the home and chaos in marriages, Connor.
Sure.
So, man, how do we help marriages during this time?
I think I'm seeing kind of two things. One is a couple that formerly would fight all the time, and now because COVID is so much bigger, they're actually running well. It's bigger than their issues they've turned in. I'm seeing that more frequently, though. I'm seeing clients or couples that are kind of at a loss. Why are we fighting right now? We usually run so well together. We usually are a great team, and we're just fighting more often. And here's what I'd say. It's the same thing we're all doing. If you rewind the tape 4 months ago, look at life. I'm just thinking, I had an office where I closed my door, and there were no kids running into my office, and I could make a phone call in peace and read emails on a huge monitor and run my day. And I call it kind of Disneyland Dad. I would come home all refreshed because I had a whole day of a break. But because things have flipped and life is so different, and so many finances, job, there's so many things that are stressful, and we have to realize that in our stress, we're stressed. Our body and our brains are responding to that stress. And so when that's happening, we have cortisol and adrenaline going through our body. We're actually putting our body into kind of a fight or flight mode. And when we're doing that, our anxiety has our focus, but we cannot focus equally in all things. And so if stress has our focus, the thing that doesn't is often marriage. And so we have this mentality, we abandon a what's best type of thinking to what if. We're just constantly consumed by what if. What's the worst case scenario that could happen, and what do I do to get ready for it? Marriage takes thought. Marriage takes time. And so we have to stop and go, all right, and maybe I've been anxious, but how much is my spouse getting of me? Are they getting good interaction? Are they getting the best of me, or is anxiety getting the best of me?
So for that husband or wife that is now working at home, and they used to love coming home to their spouse. She would come home from work, and there he would be, and it'd be like, oh, great, they'd reconnect. And now they're there all the time. They can't escape them at all. It's like this, what if this is the new normal? This isn't best for me. So how do I make the best out of a non-best situation? I'm having a struggle looking at I want to focus on my marriage because I'm focused on I don't like this.
Right.
How do we change it from a what if to the what's best?
I think we have to look at expectations, and we have to look at grace. Where are you able to see what your spouse is doing through a lens of grace? Like maybe they're anxious, but you're able to go, hey, I'm going to extend some more grace, even though I don't like everything going on. The other is to reset your expectations. This is not the same now. You can't just have a date night the same. But you can look at expectations and clearly say, I'd still love, even if we could walk together, I'd still just love to walk around the block, the kids are on the bike. Or you know what? We put a movie on for them, and we just sit out in the backyard and we just talk. And in fact, I'm really missing that. So you could articulate what you need, and you start going, what's the best we can do with these circumstances? We have to stop comparing to before. Right. It's just going to let you down and be too frustrating. But there are so many great things you could do for your marriage now. In fact, I think this is a great time to even go, we're home. How do we want to make the best of it?
Yeah. So how do you take advantage of it for your marriage at this point?
So I think that for my wife and I, the other night we watched Parks and Rec, and we had a soda together, and it was just amazing. We were laughing, we were having a good time. We just kind of thought how do we have fun? Where is life so serious now, where it's in every news story? And I'll tell you, I could read one thing on social media, and I am anxious. It could grip my mood, and so I'm really decreasing the time I'm spending the what ifs and just trying to allow myself more peaceful thought, and even thinking through, even in my marriage, like what's best right now? What can we do? What are our options? How do we have a little bit of time together? And so that's just incorporating more of this fun balance, even sex is so key in that it brings great connection together. And so there's a lot of things that I think are underutilized in all this, where we go, you know what, how do we just start making sure this is alive and active?
Yeah.
And we're making the best of it right now.
I mean, every guy has now said, okay, now I'm interested because you said
You guys
sex
can
is
all thank
key.
me later.
And they're like elbowing their wife.
Yeah.
Hey. But in all seriousness, okay, great. You know, we want to have fun. We want to have fun in marriage, or we want to be able to have great sex. But it's like, how do I make something fun when I am not in a fun situation?
Right.
You know, how do I feel sexy when I don't feel sexy?
Right.
Knowing that the kids have been around here all day long,
Right.
and that's got my attention, my worry, my anxiety, all those things, and now you want me to be fun.
So ladies know this by now, that their guy compartmentalize all of their feelings. It doesn't matter if we're in a pandemic. We could easily transition into sex. Let's just put that away. That's
brother.
the easy one. No? So, but for women, mostly, and I would say, even I'll just speak from my own wife and what she tells me, and you could chime in if you want, but safety is so key, and peace, and things kind of, nothing is compartmentalized the same thing. Everything's kind of integrated. The day is integrated into the bedroom. And so it's being mindful of that, and even thinking through, hey, how's our day been? Am I trying to up my efforts with the kids and help her so she doesn't feel consumed with that, and she feels like she's seeing love in action at home, which then, I mean, this is the basics of intimacy and romance. It's just that I'm thinking about those things that aren't a lot, that they're not dead in her. They're just a little bit more challenged because of circumstances, but the same fixes are around if you just look for them and then talk about it.
That's great.
I think it's also knowing that there are some partners where when they're stressed out, they seek isolation. They want to be left alone, and that includes intimacy. And intimacy definitely has changed during COVID. I think there's sometimes where, Karen, you said looking at the structure of your day. For some of us who are working at home, if we had a 9-to-5 job, are we working at home 9 to 5? There is no turn off. I'm not at work anymore. I'm at home working. I'm doing the laundry in between my clients, or maybe cooking dinner in between my clients. But the stress piece is huge, because that plays into how emotionally available am I for my partner at the end of the day. There is no more reunion at the end of the day when you're home. So how do you transfer that? And then there are some people who have stress where they want to process and talk it out. And that is not good foreplay, to be talking about stress or your finances when you have a partner who's like, all I want is to be close to you, and this is how I'm close to you. And it is very difficult to hear some real life problems when that lust factor has been turned on and you're craving your partner because you just want that safety that intimacy provides in a marriage.
Yeah, so let's just kind of be real practical for some couples out there right now in terms of those what if statements and that sense of security. So even on that element, Susan, of like the financial factors and the stress of what's taking place, I think there's that side of, okay, well, what if those things take place? What if we lose jobs, or what if we don't get a job? But those things can't be in our mind nonstop. So how do we provide a space for that conversation to take place?
I think that's a really good question, because and I do think, like Karen said, communicate and validate. I think letting your partner know, I heard you. You're right. We're in a tough spot. This isn't the time to talk about it now. It is the time for you to take your clothes off right now. So how do you kind of express those intimacy needs? There's a time and a place for every conversation. And I try to set a time limit for my clients. There is no more talking about our problems after 6 or 7 o'clock at night. It is just time for us. It is our family time.
And here's what I'd say is empathy means you leave your thought, your problems, and you seek to understand your spouses. And so empathy is a great thing, a connection, and really the key to empathy is so powerful because you don't have to agree. In fact, it's not about you agreeing. It's not about you at all. It's about the other person, what they're going through. And so you could ask a very empathetic question. I just want to know how you're doing, and just listen. But that they can tell you, and sometimes we're feeling that without a way to articulate it, and so it just weighs on us.
Yeah.
We don't know, and so the stress is going on, and have someone care, and then to be able to say that, you almost picture bricks being pulled off of someone, that weight. Now we're just, wow, I feel connected to you, and I feel like you're hearing me, and that is a powerful connector right now, and it also gives a method for the person who says, I just don't identify. She's freaking out, I don't get it. Or he's lost, or he's got a bunker down underneath the house and ammo and cans of soup, and he's got seed packets stored. Let me just ask you, how are you doing? Even ask a scaling question. It's kind of a counseling thing, but something like, hey, 0 to 10, how stressed are you? Because someone could say, I'm stressed. Well, if someone's a 2 out of 10, they're not very stressed. But if someone says, I'm a 10, that's pretty telling about how they're doing. The thing I would say is, have a conversation without having to have a conversation. The difference is when you're having a conversation, it's one where we're listening, we're talking. But if every conversation is one that you're having to have, it's emotional, it's weighted, it's serious, it's charged. And so you start to dread having any conversation because every time we talk, it's something serious. No, set a calm time. And in those times, you're hearing differently. You're not just emotionally responding to each other, but you're actually listening and using the best part of your brain.
Okay, so that's one element, though, of, okay, we're sharing our emotions just like with our kids, and all that, we're sharing, we're talking. But then I think there's that weight sometimes that spouses feel of, well, they've already communicated that they're really stressed. So I don't want to add stress to them by sharing what's going on in my life. But then they feel like I'm not communicating with them. So help those couples in that element in terms of like, okay, you have a stressed partner. How much do I share, knowing that they're stressed, but yet they want me to be a part of their life?
Well, just look at any pattern you're doing and then project it forward. So the pattern is, I don't say anything because I could stress you out. Well, if we keep repeating this over and over and over, what do we get? One couple's stressed and the other's silent. One's upset because they're constantly stuffing their feelings. They're actually resentful, and they're not talking about it. And so I think we need to project health. What's healthiest, even if it's hard? And that may be that we both talk about what we're going through, even if that's hard. But you never want to start an unhealthy pattern just because it's easier.
That's great.
And I think we have to take turns. And I encourage my clients, listen for understanding. Do not problem solve. Men are very good at problem solving. Women are very good at processing. So if a husband short circuits his wife's process, it's going to be very frustrating for both. And if a wife is not allowing or doesn't take into the consideration, my husband's a problem solver, that's the best of who he is, how do I temper the way that I talk? So it's slowing both processes down. We need a processor, we need a problem solver. The problem with couples sometimes is we do it at the same time. So how do we take turns?
So I mean, there's a world more we could talk about on marriages and those relationships. I just encourage you to take advantage of your situation, though, with this COVID element. We talked about the stress about working from home, but there's also advantages. You know, the water cooler talk that you'd often have at the office, you can actually have with your spouse. Or a quick work break could be taking 10 minutes and playing with your kids. That's going to win over quite a few points with your spouse moving forward. So take advantage of your situation rather than necessarily looking at it as a form of resentment of the situation you're in. But all of these type of things, we've got issues with kids. That's inevitably probably going to lead to some areas in the marriage, despite everything else with jobs and everything else that's taking place. It's going to lead to possibly some depression or anxiety. Just this uncertainty. I know for myself, I have this sense of uncertainty. I'm a planner, a visionary, and how do I end up planning it all, Susan, when I don't know what tomorrow holds? How do I make a goal for me, for my campus, for instance? How do I set a goal on what foundation am I moving forward?
I get that. And that is the definition of what anxiety is. It's the fear of the unknown.
But so as a man that can do quite a few things, it's like, really, anxiety, I mean, it feels like sometimes we feel like the word anxiety gets overdiagnosed with every
Okay,
situation
Trent,
that we're going.
I'm going to encourage you now. You are a wonderful campus pastor. You are a visionary.
I need this right now.
I know you do, buddy. I got your back. So it is just like that. It is sharing, okay? Because anxiety and depression are common responses. Anxiety has a way of putting us in a different geographical location and in a different time zone. It either puts us in the future or we're ruminating on things in the past. But when does it become problematic? We have brains that are wired for rumination. We love thinking about the same thing over and over and over again, but how long do I do that? And when I can't be target specific, when I don't have a goal that I can meet, we really are anxious in that process. There's no strategizing anything. We have too many what ifs, like Connor was saying, way too many what ifs. So, and that totally robs us of the here and now. It robs us of being present. And that psychobabble word of mindfulness is so accurate right now. How I'm waiting until my life can get back to normal, whatever that's going to be, how we wait matters. Are we going to wait anxiety ridden? Are we going to wait in bed with the covers over our head because we're depressed and we just can't face the day? These are very, very real problems. And there are some times where our anxious process or our depression symptoms truly are problematic, where it could be time to get help. And I think we are seeing more and more of that, where people are coming in with both. Anxiety, I don't know what to do. This can't be my life, right? It's like Groundhog Day every day. I'm doing the same thing over and over again. And that could be very deflating, especially when people are very goal-driven. So recalibrating your goals, doing things that are maybe not so grand, that includes a whole department, but what could be grand for your family? What is something or a few things that you can do for your spouse, for your kids, for your pets? Anything that could get you outside to give your brain a dopamine surge. And dopamine, when it's released, is that feel-good compound in the brain that says this was a really good day. But when we're isolated and we're not being stimulated by our friends through conversation, when the only thing that we have to look forward to is Zoom, there's really not a whole lot that we can gather pleasure from. And the absence of pleasure is depression.
You said to get a good dopamine hit. I heard you just say have more sex. Is that right?
Oh, yes, that is what I meant.
I mean, it's a serious topic, and yet there's this factor that many of us have gone through and we don't realize it. So help an individual that is just your normal everyday Joe that's been productive in life and they've hit this wall. What are some signs or symptoms that they'd say, I need to talk to somebody rather than just, I can muscle my way through this?
Well, Connor mentioned that word annoying. When you become an annoying partner, not that you are, but when your best friend, who you are married to, is quite concerned about you, I'm worried about you. We're not having fun anymore. You're too serious all the time. It might be time to just talk to a counselor, talk to a pastor, talk to your life group leader, just as a way of saying, I need to make my world just a little bit bigger. My world got too small. And it is connection that we really are supporting. Be connected in any way that you can. Some of the more problematic symptoms of depression would be the feeling of sadness, and I'm overwhelmed. I'm not sleeping well. My eating habits have changed. I'm hopeless. I really don't see anything good for the future for me. And again, it's a cluster of things that we look at, not just one thing. And really, we would say at that time, it could be time to come in and talk to a clinician to find out.
One thing I'll say for guys is a lot of guys don't resonate with the words anxiety or depression. That word, if you were to say, are you depressed? Nope, not me. You anxious? Not me. Nope, not. Because we've never been told those words are okay. So if you could find another way, hey, is it a kind of stressful day or even just a lot on your mind? sometimes a person will go, actually, yeah, a lot has been on my mind, but you give them a safe way to admit to something and not make a guy feel, I think the word is emasculated, like he's less of a guy. Give him almost phrasing it differently in a way he could identify with it, because so often guys don't identify with those words.
Yeah, I think the defensive mechanism goes up for a lot of men of like, you say I'm depressed or anxious? No.
Yeah.
No.
That's not me.
But are you isolated? When have you gone out with your guy pals? Because I think when men feel inadequate, they withdraw. And they can retreat to places where they feel very competent in.
Yeah.
And that could be their man cave, that could be the gym, but they're seeking competency. I can take care of my family during this time. It is extremely difficult for men or for any breadwinner to kind of hide those moments when they're feeling inadequate, when they're feeling incompetent. But men, we see a lot, they retreat back to areas where they feel proficient in. And sometimes that can be at the worst time, at the end of the day, when everybody's resolved and resources are exhausted, and men could be feeling a little inadequate. It's just, I want to be left alone. So we can see some retreating. And healthy marriages balance separateness and togetherness, but sometimes during these COVID times when we're all together, it almost seems like a threat when someone is like, I need to be left alone. I need some alone time right now.
So you mentioned the dopamine hit in terms of doing something you enjoy and that sense of victory.
Right.
So should we schedule that into our day?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yes.
Schedule it into our week even?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and it's the little things that you mentioned, right? Going out for a walk or a run, or maybe getting something cleaned up, an area of the house. Give us, what are some elements that you'd say, oh, those are great victories for the day?
Any of those, absolutely. And I remember when my son was little, we had to find gross things in the Bible. So it really could be anything that kind of
I love it.
sparks your imagination and your creativity. Because remember, this is a school hour for your kids. Their minds are being filled with all kinds of wonderful things that teachers provide. And now you're the teacher, and you're the principal, and you're the bus driver. And so it's plan something. It doesn't have to be extravagant, but it could be fun.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in real quick? Because you said something which really, and I said it when I was saying too, when during this time we're stuck together, husband and wives, we're in the home together. So again, that separate time, to me, what I'm hearing, what I see in my office, is they need that separate time. They need this alone time. And sometimes when the spouse wants the alone time, it causes the other one, what, you don't like me? Or you know, and so then there's that pursue or withdraw, thing. But I think it's so important, don't you, that in Connor, you two, especially in marriages, that we as a female need our alone time, you need your alone time a little bit during the daytime, because that it just helps us, okay, I can breathe now. I can just think about me, because it's okay to think about us.
Right.
Totally.
Personally.
Right.
And I think we forget that. We think that we always have got to be, with our partner or something. And you know what? It's okay to be alone.
The only time when I would say it's not okay to be alone is if your partner has an addiction, a comfort addiction,
Oh,
whether it is
absolutely, yeah.
drugs, alcohol, shopping, sex, internet. Anytime when somebody steps into their addiction, they really are turning their back on their family.
Yeah.
And that's the part where that type of isolation is never good during COVID time or any other time. And when someone is experiencing an addiction like that, now it's in front of the whole family. That everyone can see you are really having a hard time here being with the family. You would rather be playing a video game, gambling, whatever. And I just want to provide hope to marriages that are like that. Like, I had no idea that my wife drank right when the kids would be dropped off at school and kind of all throughout the day. There absolutely is hope. And the main thing is when you are losing yourself and your marriage and your family, into an addiction, would you just run to church? We are so equipped for you to sit right here and say, I see you. I see your pain. We have amazing support groups where people can come, step out of that isolation. That's right where Satan wants you to be. Step into your brothers and sisters in Christ at church where we know you. Because when we know you, we can love on you. We know that people change in relationship to one another. And changing in relationship to one another may not be with your family members, but could be with other people who have walked your walk before.
If someone were to be looking for one of those support groups, where would they find them, Susan?
They can just find them under the digital bulletin, under online support groups. We have a substance abuse groups for men and for women, and it is time. And if you were going to do anything to change your life, get rid of that addiction. Step back into your family.
Yeah, you can do it. If you're out there and you're listening, you say, I've tried everything. Keep trying.
Yeah.
The only way you fail is if you give up.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
So keep trying. And we'll provide a link in the YouTube notes at the bottom, the show notes as well, for some of those classes. I want to go back real quick though, Susan. So we talked about a dopamine hit or finding small victories, small goals for the day. You also mentioned about lack of sleep pattern and our eating habits changing. What role does structure play into preventing anxiety and depression? I'm just going to get some personal counseling right now so you guys can listen in.
It's okay. What would you like to tell me, Trent? I'm listening. Really, because anxiety and depression are typical responses to life's problems, there's lots of holistic things that you can do on your own to kind of be the antidote to that. So sleep is one of these processes that can recalibrate itself. But when you look at, well, what can I do? It is the whole person that we're looking at. It's water hydration, it's nutrition, it's sleep, it's exercise, it's daylight, and it is fun. So how do you kind of get that going, and how do you engage your whole family in making sure that everyone has enough of an adrenaline surge, but they also have something that they can do to strengthen their relationship at the same time. So the holistic treatment for anxiety and depression is so easy, and yet sometimes we complicate it. I don't want to sit outside for 10 minutes in the sun. It's been too hot these last few days. Or I don't want to play with you. Or I don't want to play Monopoly again. That game is too long. Can't we find something shorter? So there's sometimes when we really do have to look at, am I complicating this? What do I need to do? Oh, look at all the junk food I have in my pantry. Or I'm not hydrated. So what are some of the other things that you suggest that are not necessarily rooted in medication, but they can do holistically?
I don't think you could be tired and fatigued from, say, running and anxious at the same time. I don't think those things could operate in the same space. So when we're pushing our physical level to run or to exercise, I don't think we could be really anxious and exhausted at the same time in terms of physically.
Maybe if a car is chasing you. Maybe.
Well, that's a different level of exercise.
And
Little
anxiety.
anxiety. Little anxiety. Yeah.
I just think typically when you're that tired, it's the predominant feeling, but then after that you feel great.
Right.
And so tapping into that, for sure.
Yeah,
Physical
and
exercise.
I totally agree. I think sleep and eating is a big one that I'm seeing also, and I think just having that structure is make sure you have that structure, and you take time in the day, just like you said, for the fun time, for the family time, for outside time. It really now's the time to be healthy.
There's also that spiritual component.
Oh,
So when we look at
absolutely.
overall well-being, we take in the physical, the emotional, the psychological, but there's a spiritual well-being too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we know that God draws near to those of us who are brokenhearted. That's all of us. And He rescues those of us who are crushed in spirit. How is that not the recipe to be reminded that God is all around us?
Yeah.
And so what are you doing to take care of your spiritual well-being? Whether it's listening to the Daily Dose or listening to a podcast, listening to one of your favorite sermons on our website. but it's paying attention to what is God whispering in your ear. And a lot of times with devotionals, we say we just don't have enough time, or it's secondary because it's something that I did on my way to work. But now it could be deliberate and it could be on purpose. And that's the part of feeding our psychological well-being with, oh, people in God's time were depressed and anxious also. And then how do I draw closer to God, and how do I have that awareness that God is all around me, encouraging me, saying, you've got this.
You know, thinking about, we're talking about earlier, Karen's the household and the vibe of the household and how that impacts how the kids feel about it. And yet we think about our own father, that he's not fazed by this, and how we as his kids can walk differently because he's just not fazed. That we don't have to fear because our dad isn't scared.
There's some great elements in there. We're going to take some questions here that we've been getting from many of you that have written in already. So we'll include a bunch of those notes in the show notes. And I just want to encourage you one last book that Susan was kind of talking about, creating those habits. A great book. It's called Atomic Habits. And a lot of us, it's like, it gets a little overwhelming thinking about, okay, I need to start devotions, I need to start running, I need to set playtime. It's like, oh my gosh, I need to start my whole life. And sometimes just starting with one small thing. One small thing to say, tomorrow I'm going to drink 4 glasses of water. That's it. That's your goal for tomorrow. Just start with one small thing. You say, oh, I need something bigger. Why? Start with that and get a victory right there, and then build on it day after day. Is a great way to build in that self-confidence in those areas. Well, let's take some questions real quick. So, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Ready?
Yeah,
You're
ready.
Okay. So how do I deal with family and friends not taking this pandemic seriously and not taking the precautions necessary? So, oh man, I don't know. I know I've dealt with a lot of conversations with this. Families that are very structured with following the guidelines, and they think that other people are being frivolous and, throwing caution to the wind, and others thinking those are being too serious, we're taking the guidelines too serious, and there's division starting in families. So what do we do here? Connor, what do you think?
We got these huge kind of feuds here. We got Raiders, Chargers. They're over here and we're over here. I think one is that you start with your own family. What do we feel good about as a family? What are our boundaries? And even, hey, we're a mass family and we're doing that together as a family. The other is that you respect other families and what they want to do. And respect is such a key word, because it doesn't matter what you think about what someone else is doing unless they're being super negligent and it's, they're breaking in your house and coughing all over you. Something ridiculous. But typically, you respect other people, what they feel they need to do, even if you don't agree with it. And I would watch how much time you spend arguing about stuff, really your family, and that could be time that you use to connect and talk about stuff that's important, a relationship with God, or just things that you can actually connect you. But so much of the time we want to impose our opinion on someone else. That's not how that works. Unless they're asking for your opinion, maybe you just don't weigh in. Unless it's something that's super just off the charts irresponsible.
Seems like a lot of times people are even getting fed with the news cycle just so they have more ammo to be able to argue against the people that they disagree
And
with.
I had to have this conversation a few times with family members. Hey, I get you're doing that. However, we're limiting, because I want to let you know about me. I get anxious when I'm reading these reports about how bad things are. And I realized more knowledge wasn't helping me in any way. In fact, early on, I look at all the stuff I read. It didn't help me at all change hardly anything. There were certain things I needed to know, and I pursued those specifically. So I just had to set boundaries, and sometimes that upset people. But that's just what I need to do to thrive, and so I need to start with just communicating that to people first.
And can I jump on that, because I think that was beautiful. I think you need boundaries, especially for a family. I love what you said. As a family, you decide on how you're going to be. Okay, we're going to be a masked family, right? And say your cousins come over and they're not masked family. But you know what? You know you are, and your kids know you are, and you feel comfortable. So you just have to have those boundaries. Now, these boundaries don't have to be like a fight or anything. Just we can be with grace and say, hey, we are this family. We respect you, but still making sure that we're able to say that to other people.
Yeah.
I think that's important because we're modeling that for the other people, but we're also modeling for our children.
Right.
Yeah.
There's also scripture, isn't there, that says mind your own business?
That's in Ephesians.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
You know, and we've used those words a few different times: respect, expectations, and then grace. I think there's an element. There's a lot of times it's hard for people to say, "I can respect your decision because I completely disagree with it." But then we couple that with grace and giving grace in some of those areas, and like you said, setting the expectation for other families as they come over. Let's go on to the next question. How do I establish a routine with loss of work? I'm up late all the time, sleeping in. I've changed my eating habits, and I'm looking at like, what's the point? Why do I bother?
I would say maybe bring someone in on what you want to do. It's so easy to blow off anything responsible when no one else knows about it. It's 6 a.m., the
Accountability.
time I told myself I would get up to read, or the time I told myself I get up to run. Maybe tomorrow, I'll start tomorrow. But when we bring someone in, we have accountability to them. And if we pick the right person, they'll ask. And so their voice is in the back of their mind or their face at 6 a.m. I told someone else. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's a good.
For me, and I can never remember the address in the Bible on what the sequence is for hope. But I think we have trials first,
Yeah.
and then we persevere, and that perseverance leads to character, and that character leads to hope.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good strategy for perseverance by having an accountability person. We have a trial. We're all in this together. We get that. Each one of us has a different risk factor. Each one of us is waiting for something expectedly, but we're all waiting, and how we wait matters.
Yeah.
And so if I want to have a sense of hope, I'm going to follow the biblical equation to that. I'm understanding that I'm in a trial. How will I persevere?
Right.
Yeah, even that sense of waiting, though, how do we separate the two there, Susan, in terms of, okay, are we waiting for things to get back to normal? But how do I take steps forward if I'm waiting?
Because knowing that you're waiting matters. And if I am so future focused that I'm not being mindful of what's happening to my family today, I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss it.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't want for my family. And when we look at, can depression take it away? Can anxiety take it away? Can your addiction take it away? Of course it can.
Yeah. Speaking of depression, one of our questions is, how do we help others that are suffering through depression at this point in time? A close family member, friends. Social distancing is hard on that side. How do you come alongside somebody when you can't even come alongside? So how do we help those that are loved ones in our life through depression?
Well, I
I
would
think
say
Connor had the best answer.
I don't remember what that answer was, but it probably was the best answer.
Apparently it
I'm
was
going
good.
to encourage
Courage, that's
you,
right.
Connor.
Well, one of the things I would say, if someone's depressed, I want to speak to someone who's suicidal, is that you ask if you question. And the way that I would say that to someone, to make it as the least amount of awkward that I could, say, hey, I care so much about you, I don't want to wonder, are you thinking of hurting yourself or anything? Because if you were, I would stop what I'm doing right now, or I'm here to help you. But I don't want to, I love you, I care about you, and I want to know how you're doing. I care enough to ask you a really hard question. Is this something that are you suicidal? Because there are plenty of people. In fact, we're going to see such an uptick in people who are suicidal. We already are.
Yeah.
Because they have lost hope. The other thing in terms of encouragement is hope is so important. Hope is so important. God gives us hope.
Yeah.
We're pointing people to something that's so much bigger than us, that we know the source of hope. We could point people in that direction, but without hope, people get depressed, people lose their way, people lose their focus. And so we have the answer for what hope looks like, even if we don't have the answer for what a pandemic looks like.
I think we need to camp here for just a quick second
Yeah.
in terms of the whole element of suicide. I think we touched on it there. Okay, great. I think that's so important to have that first initial question, to be able to have the bravery and the courage to be able to ask that.
Yeah.
But then what? Right? So someone gives you a halfway truthful answer, or they are truthful and they say, yes, I am.
Right.
What do they do from there? Maybe they're not in the same home with them. Maybe they are a distant person in their life. What's their next step?
I would say if you've asked that question and someone says yes, that changes your day.
Yep.
It changes your day. In fact, that becomes the most important part of your day, and that means you're starting to pull people in, and there's suicide hotlines, there's support groups, there's a lot of things you could do, but what you don't want to do is leave someone high and dry and go, well, you'll be okay. Ask them. They say, and let me make a distinction here. If someone says, I just think I don't want to be around anymore. Well, haven't we all thought that a little bit when something bad happened? I think that's kind of normal. I also want to make a distinction if someone is cutting superficially. That is not someone who's suicidal. The scariest person to me is the person I'm not hearing from at all. The person who's fallen off the map. The person who tells you they're suicidal every single day, over time they lose their credibility, and that's someone that at a time that we don't know, but the person we're not hearing from is the person who scares me. And so that's the person we go, hey, I'm with you. I want you to know I'm with you. And I'm asking that person, I want you to promise me you're not going to take your life. Once they've done that, and then we're thinking through, who can we pull in right now? So what family member, what neighbor, what friend, what resource can we pull in and start to surround this person with a little bit of a buffer and protect them from them at that point.
Yeah.
And for many people, that brings a sense of relief. Oh, help is coming.
A sense of community.
Sense of
Because
community.
I think when you look at people who are depressed and you're a good friend for walking your friend through it, but it's the same story over and over, we call that, these are help-seeking but help-rejecting friends. And what your friend is really looking for is a connection to you. They crave that relationship with you. They don't want you to problem solve for them. But when people are saying, I'm really struggling here, they may not want a solution. They just might want that support and the encouragement.
Yeah,
So if you have a friend who is help-seeking, help-rejecting, the best thing you can do is just be with them. Just be with them, pray with them. And then if it is something that is a little more than that, because even when someone comes to the church or one of our clients says, I'm suicidal, it changes our day. And it's like, okay, all hands on deck. People who step into a suicidal process, their thinking is a little different than ours. And so, and again, we want to show people you are important to me, and we do that with community. And all hands on deck means it is an emergency. We're getting everyone that we know who loves you to be here with you to get you through this temporary, intense, big feeling moment.
So and without belaboring this topic, though, I'm just thinking about so many of the teenagers out there that now are getting the news, many of them, that they're not going back to school this next school year, but they're going to continue an online learning. And then they throw out these statements, I just want to kill myself. It's a very real statement. How concerned, how much quick action should a parent take when these statements are said? How much of it is a cry for help, and how much of it is take this serious, double down on it, because you don't want to be left with wondering, I should have done something?
I would always, if anybody says that, and I see that quite a bit, is just acknowledge it right away. Never just say, oh, you say that all the time, and walk away. Just say, wow, I see you're really upset right now, and it's really hard for you. Again, validate their feelings, communicate, sit with them. Kind of trying to process out a little bit. I know it's a parent, they're not a therapist, but just sit down and talk with them. That's about, I was going to say, maybe if there's a close friend, you can bring a friend in, but sometimes kids just say that, right? I'm just going to kill myself, or I'm done, I don't want to do that. I take every sentence they say seriously. I really do. And I listen to them, and I'll say, okay, I get it. Again, validate. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and Connor mentioned a little bit, which I see a lot, is cutting. And that's definitely increasing in this time too. And it's just another thing to show that they're just expressing their pain, and parents tend to have that feeling, or they just want attention.
Right.
It's no big deal. It is a big deal. And again, acknowledge it, validate, communicate.
Yeah. So many different issues that we could talk about during this period of time. And we've touched on quite a few. Looking at questions of how do I deal with isolation during this time. Some of these I think we've covered pretty well. Practice acceptance of the situation that we're in, and we just trust God. Several different answers in the midst of this entire segment that I think we can go back to. But I'd just love to be able to close with just kind of one final thought, from each of you. One final tip to be able to give each person.
Communicate and validate your child.
Communicate and validate.
Yep.
That's great.
In this time, I'm convinced we're going to get through this. I don't know how, but I'm convinced we're going to get through this.
Yep.
And I don't want to look back on this time with regret. I don't. I do not want my kids to see a dad who's terrified. I don't want my wife to feel like she's got a husband who's just hunkered down and passive and doing nothing. If anything, I want to look back on this time and feel like, man, I was scared to death at times. However, I didn't give up.
Yep.
In fact, I embraced this opportunity, and I love the picture of a marriage that's an iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
We were scared, both of us. However, there were sparks flying because we're both trying at this time to not just survive, but thrive. Where we could actually get through COVID, and imagine how you would feel if you looked at this time and go, you know what, we fought so hard, but we never gave up. And what I mean by that is even that we're not just, we're extension of God right now. And to many people, they're taking notice right now in a way they never have in their entire life. What does God's church look like right now? So I would say that even right now, we have a job to do. We have a job to do. I hope that my kids would say, I saw my dad doing stuff. Man, I'd be so bummed if they're like, oh, my dad was just scared getting groceries delivered in the garage for years and years and years. I don't want that. And so I want to project forward and go, that's the way I want to be an extension of Jesus right now. And so I'm just fighting for that, even if I'm a little scared in that moment.
And for me, I would just want to encourage that person who is alone. We talk about being with our families, but there really are people who are alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is no one in the apartment
That's right.
or in their house. You are not alone. You are never, ever, ever alone. And the greatest weapon that we have is our relationship with Jesus. He is with us through everything. There's scripture that says, you are not going to understand everything, so lean into me. I'm going to have you do some strange things like live alone during this time. Be in prayerful consideration of yourself and of others. Pray for other people. We know that intercessory prayer works, but we're never, ever, ever alone. And God is a God of relationship.
Yeah.
So be with one another, even if it is through Zoom.
Yep.
Yep.
Listen, if you're on the other side of this and you are a single mom at home with 3 kids running around, you don't know how you're going to make it tomorrow, I just want to say you can do it. You can do it. You can make it. You are the strength of those kids, and God has given you a spirit to be able to thrive in the midst of that situation. If you're a dad on the other line of this, facing financial ruin and not knowing how you're going to be able to pay the next mortgage bill, I just want to tell you, you can do it. You can do it. Put your trust in God and not in your own talents, and He will never, ever disappoint you. He will be your provider in this situation. And if you're on the other line of this and you're saying, I just don't know if I can keep on going, just take one more step.
Yes, that's right.
Just take one more step. And then just take one more step after that. Small goals, small victories will get you through the next day. Don't be alone. Seek out community. If it's somebody in your life group, if it's a support group here at North Coast Church, we encourage you to do that. If it's a family friend, reach out to them. And if you're on the other end and you're saying, I'm just trying to get tips on how to be able to help people, I just want to encourage you, call someone. Just call someone, pick up the phone, and just ask how they're doing. And actually take the time to care and listen. And as we listen, we can help. We can come along and we can support. Let me just pray for you as we close. God, we are so thankful for the knowledge of these 3 individuals in this panel. But God, I pray that it would be able to be applied to many families that are watching on this right now. God, I pray that your Spirit would give them strength. God, you would strengthen them in their inner core. in that area where they just don't know if they can keep on going. God, I pray that you would give them confidence where there is now doubt. Where there is fear, Lord, I pray that you would replace it with confidence. God, I pray where there is anxiety and worry, God, I pray that you would replace it with your wisdom to be able to help them navigate the day tomorrow. God, we pray for your strength in this situation. And God, that as we navigate these waters, God, that our lights would shine so bright that it would provide a way out for many others who are struggling through these same situations. God, we love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for joining us.